over my shoulder is the brand new 2023 BMW M2. For many people, the best car that BMW makes. The old M2 was a cracker, but the new second generation M2 is a different car in virtually every way. Completely different underpinnings, completely different size, completely new engine, but a bunch of people's favorite features from the old car have been retained. And in today's video, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about the new G87 BMW M2. We're going to start under the bonnet and check out the new S58 engine, which makes this car much more powerful than the previous base M2. We'll take a walk around of this two-door sports car to check out its enlarged proportions, and we'll talk about why it weighs considerably more than the old car as well. And then we'll jump inside the M2 to check out the all-new interior, and we'll see one of the halo features of this car that I'm very glad has stuck around, but you're going to have to stick around yourself to find out what that is. But before we get started, hit subscribe down below. Chasing cars, honest reviews of your next car. Brought to you by Budget Direct. But the first and most important point about the second gen M2 is its new engine. Lifting up this long bonnet with a power dome on top of it reveals the new beating heart of the second gen M2. And it's BMW's new-ish S58 3-litre twin turbocharged straight 6 petrol engine. Now, this motor is already used in a bunch of other BMW M cars, the M3 and M4 most prominently, but also the X3 and X4M SUVs. But here in the M2, this is the smallest, lightest, most interesting car that's going to get this engine. So we're expecting the S58 to be at its absolute best here in the M2. Now, compared to the standard M3 and M4, as in the manual transmission rear-wheel drive versions, it's a little bit detuned for the M2, but not by anything crazy. It's got 338 kilowatts of power and 550 newton meters of torque, which in a vehicle of this size should be plenty, but it does now weigh just over 1.7 tons, which to me sounds like a lot for such a small two-door car. So we'll have to wait until we can get the new M2 out on track and on some of my favorite roads here in Australia to see how it really goes. But I'm not expecting it to be any slouch. The automatic can do 0 to 100 in a claimed 4.1 seconds. That's 0 to 62 for those still using miles per hour, whereas the manual requires 4.3. And spoiler alert, this car right here is the manual. Now, underneath the engine bay, you can see a few other M-specific components here. Compared to the standard 2 Series, we've got a lot more bracing here in the engine bay. We've also got much more extensive cooling systems for the various engine components and oil coolers as well in here for the M2. Compared to something like an M240i, this vehicle is set up for much more hardcore track use. Closing that bonnet now and having a look at the front end of the M2, the first thing you're going to notice is the very limited availability 50 years of M roundel on the front of this car. Now, the cutoff to get these cool badges is going to be March, April production, so if you want that, you really need to order like right now. The other things you can take in here is that the front end of the M2 is quite different to a standard 2 Series. You can catch all of our videos on the normal 2 Series on the channel. The headlights are largely shared, but look at this brutal, muscular, squared off front end. We've got these very square kidney grille openings, horizontal, lateral, black slats in there, and a silver M2 badge. And then these really big air intakes, all a very square sort of look on this car, which matches the sort of virtually box fender aesthetic that runs down the side, and that's what we're going to have a look at right now. So the front end of the M2 makes quite the statement, and the wider track on this two-door car really does set it apart proportionally from the previous M2, which was a really great looking vehicle. But the additional width, and particularly track width on the new car, is part of what's going to make it a more serious weapon for track use. So at the front here, we have a 19-inch alloy wheel and a 275/35 R19 tyre. This vehicle is wearing Michelin Pilot Sport 4S rubber. We'll come to the back in just a moment, but as we start to walk down the side of the car, you are picking up some of the same design cues as the underlying 2 Series, so we have these very, very prominent side skirts here, which really kind of give you this 3D effect down the side of the car. We've got these integrated door handles like the standard car, but M-specific mirrors. Now, this vehicle is finished in Zandvoort blue. That's kind of the hero color for the new M2, and we've got the carbon roof here. Now, the carbon roof is standard in Australia. It would have been a $6,000 cost option if it wasn't standard, but most people want this, so BMW Australia have just ticked that box for every car. But if you want, you can do a special order. You can de-spec the carbon roof and have a sunroof instead, but only a few people want to do that according to BMW Australia. Now, moving further down the side of the M2, here's where we can really see the business end of the vehicle. This is rear-wheel drive. There's no all-wheel drive version of the M2, unlike the M3 and the M4. So here we've got much wider tires, 295 tires at the back in a 20-inch alloy wheel. Now, this car is fitted with the gloss black alloys, but they're a no-cost option. The other choice is the same actual design as these wheels, but with silver facings on the spokes. So of course, some people are going to prefer that. Others want all black everything. You get to choose your own style on the M2. As we now head around the back of the new M2, you could probably catch a glimpse over there of an XM, which I'll have a separate video of up on the channel, kind of bookending the BMW M line, but you know, the M2, it's my kind of thing, and I think it's probably a lot of your things as well. You can let me know down below in the comments what you think of BMW's M car strategy. But anyway, I think around the back of the M2 is where this new generation is most reminiscent of the old car, and I think it really does pull off the look. Now, I've read a lot of people's comments about the new M2. Some people love it, some people don't like it so much, and that's okay. But what's clear is that BMW is polarizing more and more with their designs, but among their new suite of cars, the 2 Series is probably the most classic to look at, and I think it works really nicely in M2 form here. So we've got another 50 years of M roundel around the back. You've got this very nice anodized silver M2 badge, so that stays as silver despite most of this car being in black. I think some people will want that in black, but I like it how it is. But of course, it's difficult to ignore the super prominent rear diffuser on this car, and we've got these 4 big, very real pipes with active flaps, so you can be social when you're starting the engine at 6 in the morning or not. They are finished in kind of like a dark chrome, so they're not completely black, they're not completely silver, but they do measure 100 mil each, which is a nice diameter. So they're big fat pipes for a relatively small car, and you can really see that kind of box fender-ish aesthetic here in the M2, which does connect it a little bit to the the 1M Coupe. Got to be careful, 1M Coupe, M1. This thing goes back to the 1M Coupe, it goes back to the 2002 Turbo, kind of carrying the torch for BMW's small performance coupe. So that's a look at the exterior of the new M2. Let me know what you think about it down below. We're now going to jump inside to check out the cabin. There's really only one choice that you have to make when it comes to the interior of the BMW M2, and I'll reveal what that is in just a sec. But first of all, I've given BMW a lot of praise in recent years for keeping their cabins very classic, uncluttered, and not too technology focused, and that's how it continues for the new M2. It does get some pretty cool tech, but ultimately you sit very low, you've got a traditional round steering wheel, you've got brilliant ergonomics. It feels like a normal car in here rather than a science experiment, and for a focused, sporty little car like the M2, that's really important. But what about the fundamentals in here? Well, first of all, the car costs $120,000, which is quite a bit more than the old M2, but it does take a step forward in terms of performance, but also in terms of the tech and the luxury here in the interior. So the first thing that you kind of look at is this leather-bound steering wheel with quick access M1 and M2 controls. We've got carbon trim in this car, which I'll come back to in just a moment. But then you look through that wheel at the new BMW curved display. So that's an addition for all 2023 2 Series cars. It's been seen in a bunch of other BMWs, and it is really striking. We've got a 12.3-inch digital driver display and a 14.9-inch central touchscreen up here, and it's all one integrated unit, which is cool. But talking about keeping things classic, you still get a hardware rotary iDrive controller, which is brilliant because this car is made for back roads. You don't want to be like trying to touch some target on a bumpy road. You want a physical redundant controller, and that's what we've got here. But also look what we have right in front of it. What's this, kids? It's a manual transmission selector. Now this could well be the last BMW M car developed with a manual, so if you've been sitting on the fence, you want a new car with a manual, you've got $119,900 to drop on said car, go for the manual. It's the same cost as the auto, but this transmission will likely be brilliant. You can feel already the throw is very, very short, feels great. I'm a big fan of the new M3 and M4 when equipped with the manual, so this is how I would take my M2. But what about that big choice that I said you have to make? Well, that's whether you want standard seats or you want these very focused carbon bucket seats. Now, they're only available in the $14,500 carbon experience option. You get these carbon seats, they save 11 kilos of weight for the car. That's not nothing. You get carbon trim, but you also get 2 intensive sessions of track driving training in BMW's own cars rather than in your own car. So I think a lot of people are going to take this option. Driver training and track driving training, proper professional instruction is really important. So I would strongly consider doing that. But I think the standard seats would be where it's at for me. A little bit more comfortable, a little bit more breathable. You've also got the choice of black or tan. If you go for the bucket seat, it's really only for people with quite small frames. So I would try these out before you order them, but they are a very, very impressive and very supportive seat for track work. So the next step for me will be driving the new BMW M2 in the coming months. So make sure to hit subscribe, and it's over to you at this point. What do you think of this car? Let us know down below in the comments. Also, you can check out our reviews of the BMW M240i Coupe on the channel, plus my review of the 230i, which I think is the sweet spot in the lineup. Plus, you can check out the 2 Series campaign at our most recent car of the year, all available right on the Chasing Cars channel. Make sure you subscribe, make sure you hit the notification bell, and as always, thanks for watching Chasing Cars.